Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Board of Trustees monthly meeting. And tonight we are also including a public hearing. On food truck moratorium that's been proposed. So I'm going to start first with a few quick announcements and ask if anyone else has any. First of all, I want to say thanks for Community Day. It was really fun. I thank you all the sponsors, to the Rec Commission who did all the work, all the volunteers who helped, cops who kept everybody safe and moving through the streets, all vendors and PBAC. And most especially, it was really hot and miserable day, and they stayed long into the evening. Recreation facilities crew who kept the garbage under control for the day. We are looking for a parking enforcement officer and an additional parking enforcement officer and a crossing guard. So spread that word, and the contact for that is the officer in charge. We have not advertised that yet, so this is the first time it's being announced. We need to follow up with a published ad for those positions. Bear Street construction is underway. The contractor was able to come up with a plan to keep two-way traffic from Northern Avenue all the way to 9D, which is a lot easier on the wastewater treatment plant and the county vehicles that are going in and out. And they have planned a route for pedestrians through Mayor's Park, at the edge of Mayor's Park, where now the dugouts are. So I feel confident in their plan, and we will monitor it. The police department will monitor it to make sure it's working on our busiest when we are experiencing our heaviest flows of pedestrians on Fair Street. Any other announcements? Then I'll make the introduction to the public hearing. Aaron, you had a question first about material that you were.
It has to do with the executive session. I was hoping it did not have to do with the public hearing.
Oh, I thought you meant the previous discussion with the lawyer. I got it. Okay. So back to the moratorium. So I want to start by defining what a land use moratorium is. It's a temporary suspension of local government approvals to halt or pause development in a specific area or for particular uses while the community considers and potentially adopts changes to its comprehensive plan or its land use regulations. These moratoria are essentially a tool to preserve the status quo and allow for careful planning and revision of local land use laws, addressing new circumstances that aren't adequately covered by existing laws. So where are we right now? Tonight, we are not changing rules about food trucks. We're not adopting or changing a local law. We are contemplating putting a pause on reviewing and approving applications, with a particular exception for events that have already advertised to have food trucks. The only ones of these are the markets and beer fest at St. Mary's in the fall. So we want to put that pause on until we have clearer, less arbitrary, and more thorough guidance in place. This will create more fairness for applicants, for the board as it considers applications, and for the residents and businesses potentially impacted by food trucks. Currently, food trucks are handled under Chapter 71, the licensed chapter. It was originally drafted in 1931. It was last updated. Last updated in large part in 1992, and then there have been a couple of tweaks over time, in the early 2000s and then in 2021. It was written in a different time. It largely addresses door-to-door solicitation and street peddling, which are things we don't see much of anymore. It was not envisioned at a time when food trucks were considered or were popular. And we're seeing rising applications for food trucks and public feedback about the desire to have food variety in the village and casual grab-and-go options. And that's especially since after COVID. So there are references to peddling and chapter 71 that are vague enough that they can be stretched and applied to food trucks. No peddling in our parks or on West Street. And some folks might argue that those are the where food trucks might be best deployed, particularly for community events. There are linear feet minimums between a peddler and a brick and mortar establishment selling the same wares. There are references to congestion caused by peddling and the authority of the police on site to determine public impediment as it occurs. And there is some reference to garbage control by peddlers. So cumulatively, this creates a scenario where a village board can be arbitrary in making determinations for food truck applications. And arbitrariness is not a good thing in local code. Clear criteria, the greatest degree of predictability for applicants. They know what the rules and the boundaries are, and that they know they're being applied fairly. That's important. What's missing in chapter 71 is consideration for things like neighborhood types that might be appropriate or inappropriate for food trucks, hours of use, impact mitigation for garbage and odors. So food trucks aren't new, and regulating them properly isn't new. There are lots of examples of regulations across New York State that we can draw from. I have asked Deputy Mayor Woods to draft local food truck regulations that we can bring to the public and to the board for review and comment and consideration, and it'll be a public process. So the question that's before the board and the public tonight is, are we in favor of establishing a 6-month moratorium on the issuance of permits for food trucks while we develop and pass more reasonable and thoughtful local regulations? And again, with the exemption for already advertised events. So with that, make a motion to open the public hearing. Second. All in favor? Aye. Is there anyone wishing to speak? Please.
Food trucks, already the parking's affected my business, parking situation. Food truck, excuse me.
Give us your name, and we know you're Doug, but for the record.
Douglas Price. A food truck is it's just gonna create more competition, garbage, so on and so forth. And I don't think the village should do it. You can talk to Bobby over here, right? Try to do a hot dog stand, remember a long time ago? Yeah. And he wasn't able to do it. He did it for a while. I don't remember exactly what happened. But the thing is that I just don't think we're brick and mortar. We're trying to stay alive. We're trying to make our money, employ people, and this and that. And a food truck is just going to bring competition that we can't deal with. And okay, in inclement weather, so the food truck don't show up, but I'm still open. It's just not right. And they did food trucks in Beacon, and one of the rules with the food trucks in Beacon is you had to be there every day that the food truck was allowed, regardless of weather. I just don't think it's fair. And I just don't think it's right. And I don't hope it never happens. That's it.
Thank you. I hope that you'll participate when we review drafts.
Yeah, I'll participate, but I don't know about drafting any rules. I think the rules right now are quite adequate. They're fine. I don't know why we have to have rules also that we're gonna do it with to figure out the rules for it. I don't get that. Doesn't make any sense to me. It doesn't make any sense to have food trucks in town, in the village. I understand doing special events, doing whatever, something going on down on the dock, so on and so forth, but they have them here on a regular basis. It's not right.
Thank you. Anyone else? Online wishing to speak?
See, Gaston has raised his hand. Gaston, can you go ahead and unmute yourself?
Good afternoon. I want to first thank the board for actually taking time to do this right. To avoid issuing permits arbitrarily, which raises concerns about favoritism, about corruption, about abuse of power, but rather to go through a transparent and informed study phase before proceeding with any updates. And I think as you go about this, I want to ask you to think about two things. One, people living next to residential lots should have a reasonable expectation that their quality of life will not be sacrificed for someone else's profit. And two, that the addition of food trucks will have more negative, more damaging effects in areas that are already overwhelmed by crowds and by multiple uses than in other areas. Think about the kind of noise caused by generators and by the daily setup of the food truck, especially by owners who seek to operate on most days and during extended hours. High noise levels are already a problem in areas that are overwhelmed, like the lower village. Please don't add to that. Two, think about crowds. To make a profit, the truck operators need to attract crowds, especially those operators who already have a following because they own multiple trucks and because they have a large social media presence. Now, you have been tasked with managing a village that is overrun by crowds during summer and fall months, and creating yet more reasons for people to crowd out the village, I think is contrary to that mission, especially in areas that are already overwhelmed, like the lower village. In terms of parking, of course, drawing more consumers to the area means drawing more cars to the area. And so the question is, where will they park, especially in areas that are already overwhelmed, like the lower village? And then think about garbage. Think about the garbage that is caused by the trucks and by the customers who grab their meals and then go wandering around the area and leave trash all over the place, making the area unsightly, attracting vermin, causing sanitary concerns, which then cost taxpayers money when the cleanup costs are passed on to the village. This is already a problem, especially in areas like the lower village. This is Saturday night at West and North Street, right? This is an issue that this board has already discussed, right? And think about the obnoxious odors that are caused by cooking, by grilling, by on-site food preparation, especially in areas where lots and buildings are close together, like the lower village. Think about signage. You have codes in place to govern the signage, business signage, to preserve the character of the village. Food trucks use garage and large signage to attract their customers. Why would you allow them to ruin the character of the village while you regulate brick and mortar businesses, including those that are already in the lower village? Think about zoning. You went through a long process to zone the village in ways that cluster uses where they made sense. Why ruin that now by allowing commercial uses in lots that you have already decided were best zoned residential and were best adjacent to residential lots? And then think about copycats. You allow one truck, and soon you will have requests for more and more trucks, which will either overburn parts of the village that are already overwhelmed, like the lower village, or which will diminish the quality of life all over the village as the trucks have to sort of spread out, right? And so I just ask you, one, I want to thank you again for doing this in a thoughtful manner. And two, I just want to ask you to please keep in mind this as you move forward, to please prioritize the quality of life of the residents, of your constituents, over the profits of the few. So thank you.
Note here. Is there anyone else wishing to speak, either here in the audience or online?
Hey Derek, come over for a burger, will you? You can't hear me, I know.
No, you can hear me.
You can hear me? Should you? Good job, buddy.
Okay, we first want to make sure that we've heard from everybody. I'm seeing no more hands, so I'm going to assume, would board members, we're going to have a session too, but would you like to keep the public comment open through the end of the meeting? Everyone's late, okay.
Derek just raised their hand.
Oh. Mr. Grant?
Derek, can you unmute yourself?
Hi. Good evening. I won't take long. I think speakers have been eloquent in what they've said, and I sympathize with Gaston and Doug when they say that the addition of a food truck is another imposition on the lower village residents that is wholly unnecessary and does not benefit the community in any way. And from my perspective, only benefits the person who collects rent from that food truck. I prepared a brief statement. It won't take long. If you'll indulge me, I say, as a longtime resident, the Lower Village, the private property. Say again?
Sorry, just if you can keep it within 3 minutes, that'd be great. I should have
Yeah,
said that. at the
okay.
beginning, but The others have respected that.
Okay.
minute
All
now.
right, I'll give you my four big points. It will bring unmanageable refuse, traffic concerns, crowding, carbon monoxide off gassing. That's number one. Number two, it would be a blight on the neighborhood and views from the park. Number three, it'll steal business away from other business owners. And number four, it's non-compliant with codes we've already ratified. And that was what I wanted to say tonight for you.
Very much. And again, I just want to emphasize that a moratorium period, what we're saying tonight is not we're going to say yes or we're going to say no. It's saying we are pausing to figure out regulation that is appropriate to the village and that the public can review with us. There's no decision being made tonight other than pausing the issuance of permits. Okay. If there's no further,
Does Gaston have additional
You-
comment?
do you have additional comments or is your hand just still up?
Yeah, I just wanted to, I made my remarks with that in mind, that this is about pausing so that you can come up with a good policy. I just think it's really critical in coming up with that policy, that you recognize that some areas are more overwhelmed already than other areas. Like treating everything equal doesn't make sense when the glut of problems are happening in a couple of areas rather than all over the village. So just ask that you please keep that in mind as you move forward. And thank you again for taking the time to do that.
Thank you for clarification. We will keep the public comment portion open until the end of the meeting in case anyone joins late or has an epiphany as discussion goes on. So now we'll open it to board discussion. Eric, you had.
Yeah, some question, but also, reflecting what we've heard already from the public comment, I think, the comments are really consistent. I think that's important to note. But especially emphasizing what Gaston said about, this affects some areas more than others.
Yeah.
I just want to acknowledge there are already food trucks in the village, right, at special events. And I have not heard any public comment about whether that's killing businesses or creating too much junk or anything like that, right? And so the moratorium is universal through the village, and so it just wants to be clear, because I worry that we're approaching this with too big of an instrument and too blunt of an instrument. For starters, the way that the moratorium is written with the definition of the food truck, I think C Street would be banned because it is a vehicle that sells drinks to people that is on our property. And, we're being a little bit broad here in some things where being more specific is probably better. That's one concern that I have. In the interest of trying to be clear, we might be causing more confusion. Many of the comments already maybe weren't even about a moratorium. They're about food trucks, right? So another thing that I worry about is that we don't create more process than we need. And for example, there is a section on hardships, and if this really affects somebody, they have a method of petitioning the board
In the moratorium, you mean,
in the moratorium.
which is required by law.
Good. But the process is to create a new public hearing on that. And I just feel that this somehow is being treated differently than when somebody comes and wants to get an event license, for example, or a docking permit or waive fees for a docking permit, just to name a few things that have come up recently or even on the agenda today. They come before the board. We don't need a public hearing on these things. in this way. And you know, you made a point about being arbitrary. I don't think it's arbitrary what this board does. We take the application and the facts and we make decisions on it. So it's, I mean, to me, I would be in favor of a narrower scope for a moratorium than what's here. Maybe limit it by geographical spaces, because I think we already have a process in place. That's why we're meeting. Somebody came for a permit, so that seems to be working. You can say no, but also I think the food trucks that already exist this year and might exist next year are not causing a problem right now. So anything I want to say, and I'd love to hear discussion from all of you about that.
Just a couple quick things. C Street doesn't sell food on village property parked in the Hudson River. And they're selling to their passengers, not to the general public. So I understand where you're going with that, but that may not be the best example. Just want to make sure we don't create confusion about that. And I also want to clarify that adopting a moratorium requires a public hearing. The intent is not to require a public hearing for food trucks. You just have to have a public hearing to adopt a moratorium. So it's not setting up food truck applications to have public hearing. I don't know if there's confusion about that point.
I just didn't, can I
Yeah.
clarify?
Yeah, please.
So in the section on hardships.
Oh, you're
in
referring
the moratorium,
specifically to hardship. Okay.
Yes. In the section of hardships, it does say upon submission of written application by the village clerk, blah, 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 schedule a public hearing on said application.
Yeah, I got what you're saying. Yeah, because you have to allow, under the law, you have to allow relief or the potential for relief.
Make sense?
And that is why that is in place. That's standard across moratoria. And town recently had a moratorium related to fuel storage. And there was provision in that part of the course related to hardship. So that's how moratoria are structured. But let's talk about the other points that Aaron raised. Anyone else want to hop in on discussion?
I'm still totally unsure of why this is needed personally. And I agree with everyone's comments, you know, like it's hard to run a business here. We don't need more competition, but when was the last time we got a food truck application?
The clerk can answer that question. We've had several in the last few months.
Couple of months, we've had two.
Two? Okay, and so they haven't come before the board, we haven't.
Nope, because
approved
they came
them.
in right at the same time,
same
and
time.
I put this proposal forward, recognizing the holes in chapter 71 related to food trucks.
Right, but I would also like to point out that like, we have a zoning code that only allows certain kinds of businesses on private properties in certain areas, right? So it's not gonna go into your next door neighbor's driveway. And it's probably not gonna go on Main Street because we have parking fees that we need to gather there. And I have to agree with Aaron that like, you know, like I've watched this boards before us, like have food trucks come to them and be like, we'd like a permit, please. And most of the time they are turned down or put in a place that like the sunshine doesn't shine. So I just have I don't see why we need to build more rules and regulations and things over something that's already been managed really well by this board in the past. Like, I'm not saying we should put food trucks in everyone's backyards or whatever. I'm just saying, like, I think that the current code is sufficient to address these things as they come before us. And I trust that board members and the public comment would guide us and any board that comes next to make great decisions, because that's what we do.
Usually, yeah. The reason and I'm not saying this to be combative, I'm asking an honest question.
Mhm.
When I put forward the concept of a moratorium, when there's a particular application we're talking about tonight, which was for a residential parcel for a truck from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m., 5 days a week. That was the application.
Mhm.
And when I raised the prospect of a moratorium, you sat here and said, can't we just approve this first? So when we had an actual application in front of us that posed problems, you seem to be in
I don't
favor.
recall saying that actually, but
It's in the
if it's in the zoning code that it says, you make up a lot of things.
I'm not
If it's in the
listening.
zoning code and that it says like residential districts, you can't have food trucks, you can have a private practice office. There are certain businesses you can have. There would be no reason for this board to approve something that the zoning code already says no to. It wouldn't even be an application that we need to review as far as I'm concerned, because the clerk or the building inspector or whoever reviews the applications as they come in could say, I'm sorry, you're asking for something that's in an area, it's just not appropriate here, sorry. That application needs to go. Like, I just don't know why we're building so much extra process. There's so much work for the village to do, as you well know, and you manage a lot of it, so I honor that. But I don't understand what we're doing here tonight. That's my position.
Okay, I understand your logic tonight, it surprised me, given the lack of.
I don't agree with
I
you.
don't-
I think you're making things up.
Okay, Leslie, you can watch the tape.
Okay, well,
I'm not gonna die on this mountain. This seemed like a direction that the board wanted to go. Let's get feedback from Tweets and Laura. If people feel it's sufficient,
But so
we don't
if
go
a,
further.
if a food truck application came for Main Street, not, and they could park in, like I've seen food trucks that park in the spot next to Old Souls, right? So they don't need a public parking spot. Then what would we do? And they could ask to be there 5 days a week. I mean, I guess they would be next to I'm just trying to think this through. Like, they'd be close to a restaurant, so that would not, maybe it would knock them out, but like, there's probably another spot, hold on.
The property, in front of those, the garage.
Sorry,
Okay,
this
but
is
I'm just trying to think of a
I just want to tell you along.
Alright, well, I'll come back to you. Right now, the board has the floor.
But just imagine that I'm sure it exists, that there's some kind of parcel on Main Street where this could happen, right? So then we wouldn't have the zoning code. And if it weren't next to a restaurant, what I appreciate about this is that I think we don't, I guess I went into this thinking we don't have the structure in order to make the permit decision. Without, without being arbitrary.
Can I ask a question from sort of the reverse perspective? Right now, the licensing code does not allow peddlers in our park or on West Street. Now, and right now they have been on West Street in the past as part of Community Day. They've been in the park as part of Community Day. I think those are totally appropriate uses of food trucks in the village. I think that St. Mary's Festival is a great use of food trucks. I am not looking to have myself. I'm not looking to have food trucks set up parked businesses for all time. That's one of the things I'm concerned that concerns me is we say nothing right now we say nothing in our regulation of the licensing, the parameters for the licensing that would prevent a village board from saying, yes, if the location were right, to 7 days a week, 10 hours a day. That's a concern for me.
I mean, frankly, if you own a food truck and you're setting it up 10 hours a day, 7 days a week in this town, you are losing money. Let me just say that. Like it's just
sure. But we just did have someone ask to set up for 8 hours a day for 5 days a week. So we already know that is within the realm of possibility.
Right,
Whether
but
that person has good business sense is another question.
Right, but if it's in a place that's not allowed, then it doesn't even matter. Like, why are we having this conversation?
Sweeps?
I appreciate the concerns that we heard from folks who live in the lower village, about traffic and garbage and noise, and I get all that. We all live here, we all see the same things. I don't think that's, your concerns are echoed, I think, by everyone on the board. I think I too thought that without a structure in which to say yes or no, and a structure meaning like an actual language that clarifies what's reasonable, what we define as a good location, hours of operation, all the things that someone who would want to do that business would need to know about doing business in the village in a food truck. I thought that would be, I think that seemed like reasonable, because I don't, peddling is like, that's crazy. Like, I mean, the language and the concept is from, as you noted, like 1931. That's, they couldn't even have contemplated like what a food truck would have been. So I think updating it, I think is reasonable. Whether it creates more process, to Aaron's point, I mean, I maybe, but I think that's also kind of like our job is to create processes that allow for guardrails, not to inhibit people from having business opportunities and being creative and coming up with interesting ideas to bring to the village as a business or what have you, but to make sure that for future boards that there is, and for residents, that there are things that like allow for not the willy-nilliness of, someone just showing up in a truck and selling whatever whenever they feel like it because it's a nice day down and at the waterfront. It isn't allowed, but it's not. It's not hard to, but people are asking. We did get one application. Sure. So we say no, and but I like all of our rules, like all rules, like there's a reason why we have them. Maybe some need to be fine-tuned and worked out and made updated and more thoughtful. I think that's our job. Like I'm okay with that. A moratorium, maybe that language is, I don't know, maybe
It's just the
maybe it was
mechanism. It's
too
how
much. I don't know,
It's
but
how the law works. That's the mechanism. Or you take, the options here are, as I see them, and there may be other variations that people want to put forward. The options are, we take these applications case by case, and without criteria for reviewing the applications, we make, we make, the zoning code does not directly reference food trucks, Eliza. It is, that separates uses. I let you speak. I'm going to ask you not to interrupt me. All right. Your option is to address on a case-by-case basis and say no based on whatever set of criteria you build as a board in the moment. Or with a moratoria, you say we are not entertaining applications while we develop the criteria. That's what a moratorium does. I know it's a word that it's like, it's in Latin and it sounds scary. It sounds like death, but that's the language of the law. And it's the mechanism that works. If you all don't think, I mean, honestly, I wouldn't have put this on the agenda if I hadn't had a sense from earlier meetings when several of you weren't here. I wouldn't have put this on the agenda for discussion if I didn't think it was a viable discussion. It seemed like a viable discussion, which is no longer viable. So we need to make a determination tonight whether we're going to adopt a moratorium or not. Again, I'm not going to die on this hill. I don't feel that strongly about it, but I feel that we should have reasonable criteria for assessing applications when they come in, and not, as has been in the past, I don't want it there. I mean, there have been very broad reasons given by previous boards. And just, for the record, it's not the role of local government to control market competition. I'm not saying it's a good thing, but that's not the role of local government. Laura?
I'm looking at our zoning map right now, and it is, as much as we set out zones, there's a lot of patchwork, and so, I think that there's enough, there are enough areas where we could be surprised by something and not have something strong to stand on. Both for location and for the parameters that we set, to limit the impacts, and I'm especially concerned about public health impacts. And so I think that the moratorium is, I think we tried as a board to be methodical and comprehensive and set things out for future boards to also have a structure, and I'm in favor of that. So I'm in favor of the moratorium
As written.
as written.
I first of all, Kathleen, thanks for, I know you put in work in the moratorium. I appreciate that. I do think the process of us discussing this over several weeks, tonight included, we all learned stuff, and we have the opportunity to change our minds and to develop, and that's a really good thing for us to do, right? That's why we have conversation. So it's, I think, any of us starting in one place and moving to another thought on this, that should be welcome. The idea here, is, I just, have a question that may have been answered in previous meetings, so I apologize, but do food trucks need a permit today?
Yes, you need a license. That's what the licensing chapter is for.
Okay, so there is a process for,
There is a process that is, as I said at the beginning of the meeting, that is structured around the format of door-to-door solicitation and street side peddling, which is antiquated language and does not take into consideration the kinds of criteria that Laura is discussing and is concerned about, that Doug has raised and is concerned about: garbage,
right,
signage, public health impacts, crowd control. There aren't, that is not the same as restricting someone from going door to door for the purpose of conversion. That's in the law.
right.
I mean,
So,
that's the law we're dealing with.
Right, and, for starters, I'm not, inherently against any old words or old laws, right? I mean,
But do they serve?
so, well, that's a good question, and what I'm hearing, if I can interpret what I'm hearing from my fellow trustees and from you, is that there is a desire to update the code. I think the question is whether there should be a moratorium while we're updating code.
So,
And I think there's a lot of questions, and I think the moratorium, while the goal was to make things simpler and clearer, the moratorium is actually confusing things the way that it is now.
it's confusing you.
Well, it's just hearing the public and what they're talking about. We're not really talking about a moratorium here. And
I don't think that's an accurate depiction of at least Gaston's
sorry.
comments, Aaron. Well, you're.
I didn't know
you're
we're having a
speaking for-
one-on-one conversation.
But you're speaking for everyone, and you're speaking for all members of the public. So I'm just trying to put a boundary on the way you're representing. Sorry.
Please continue with your conversation.
More boundaries,
We're exhausting. Okay.
likewise.
I'm gonna bring a vote unless there's any discussion anyone else would like to have, I'm gonna bring this to a
Can I
vote.
say one more thing?
Sure, Doug.
Regarding in front of the garages next to Old Stall, where the fella had the, what are they,
The lobster roll.
lobster rolls and all that. I didn't care for that at all. There's no doubt. But James, who rents that property, also owns Barber and Brew. And a lot of that was going into Barber and Brew for the customers. Now, I'm not saying it was right. I don't think it was right, but just to let you know that. It does sound like he just showed up and set up there. You know, he was given permission by the person who rented the property. That's it.
And it was also on, that same vendor was part of Community Days when Community Day was on Main Street and, yeah. Thank you for that clarification.
I'm s-
Go ahead, I'll recognize, go ahead.
Sure. I just really want to clarify a couple of things that have been misrepresented and in relation to my remarks, and then make a point. My comments were framed about the moratorium. They were not framed about the food truck. I thank the board for taking the time to do an expert job of this and to go through a process of clarification and updating the code. I did not say I don't want a food truck in front of my house, right? And then I proceeded to say, these are the kinds of things I would like the board to consider as they're trying to come up with a policy to apply to the whole village. So I was not talking about food trucks. I was actually congratulating the board, I think, for wanting to do their job as public servants to go through the process of updating laws to reflect the current realities and the current zoning plan. The second thing is, I understand that there have been food trucks in front of my house and in Dockside for special events. I welcome them. I love Community Day. I was at them. In fact, I wish that Community Day this year had also been part of West Street. That's a special event, as it's an event by the church. That is not Tuesday through Sunday, 11 to 7 p.m. for 5 months, right? Which is what the application is. So while there might be food trucks in the village today, and you know, things haven't fallen apart, that is, the special events is not what we are talking about. We are talking about the consequences of someone having to live next to a food truck operating for 5 days a week for 8 hours a day. And I think that should be considered by our elected officials. And then the other thing is, I do think that it's good to have some kind of policy in place so that you avoid the perception of arbitrariness or of other kinds of motives. When the first application came in for the food truck for the 5 days, 7 days a week, 5 days, right? One of the trustees, Trustee Starbuck, actually did say on the meeting, we should just approve this. I was watching, it's on YouTube, anyone can watch it. Weeks later, there's a letter in the current from the same trustee saying, oh, the law says we cannot do it, so there's no need for anything. Which one is it? Right?
Did I respond or you're done? You're still going?
No, I'm still going.
Okay, sorry.
So that's precisely what I'm trying to avoid for you, right? Is that people don't have to wonder, why was she so eager to approve that application and not other applications? So in some ways, what I'm asking for is just professionalism. I'm asking for a board that does its job and that comes up with policies that protects the public, but also protects members of the board from being seen as they are just agreeing to things for private or personal interest or animosity rather than for following what's in the rule. So I just wanted to clarify all that, right? We'll have the discussion about food trucks and where they should be later. This is about the process, right, of having a moratorium so that you can update, which seems to be the way that which you update a code. And I just wanted to be very clear. I don't like to be represented. That said, again, I want to thank all of you for this conversation and for the conversations I hope you have going forward about how to best protect the quality of life in the village over those who seek to just profit from it.
All right, can I respond to that, please? Because I've been accused by 2 people here. One parroting the mayor's accusation against me.
I was not parroting.
That I heard you said the exact same words she did.
That's the words you
So
used
2
on the
people
tape.
have quoted a video that I'll go back and watch. And if I actually said, let's just approve it, let's just approve the food truck right now, if I said that, I will apologize to the public. Great. All right. But I'm pretty sure I wouldn't say that. I didn't say that. And there is a process, and we as a board do the process if we are given the opportunity to do the process. And if that application came before us, we would probably look through the zoning code, look through all the things, listening to the residents and the business owners. And I'm pretty sure this board, like every board before it, would not allow a food truck in someone's driveway. Wouldn't permit it, so I am personally affronted by the accusations that have been given here. And I also, like Aaron said, have a right to change my mind and also have discussions and like consider things thoughtfully. And for you to make these assumptions or accusations about me just because I have a different opinion or would take a different approach to this issue, I find really insulting. So that's
No,
my
no accusation.
Thank you.
No
We're not gonna
insult.
have any more back and forth. Thank you very much. You both have said your piece. There is, excuse me, there is, we have agreed to keep the public hearing open until the end of the meeting.
Okay, I apologize.
There is, just for your reference, codes which are related to other codes normally make a cross-reference. It's also the structure of local law. There is no cross-reference in the licensing chapter to the zoning chapter. So is there any further discussion on the part of board members? Okay. I would make a motion to accept the moratorium as written. May I have a second?
But we're keeping the.
But
Oh, I'm sorry, we're
Public
keeping the
hearing
public comment open. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so we'll
Do this at the end of the
do
meeting,
it at the end of the meeting.
but that will be my motion at the end of the meeting. In case anyone falls off and doesn't want to continue. Okay, so now we will shift into our monthly meeting. As I said, we're accepting, good night, Bob. We're accepting the reports as submitted. They are all, night, Doug, they're all available on the village website. There are just a couple things that I want to pull out. The $2.5 million dam grant has been received. It's in our accounts. And it's being processed by the clerk and the accountant. The accountant is also processing the paperwork we needed to work through for the ban for fronting the funds on Fair Street until FEMA pays us back. So she'll be bringing that to us soon. I think we have Bugsy on. I did want to have Bugsy here for part of the conversation. A couple of things. Bugsy, thank you for preparing, helping prepare Fair Street for the construction that's getting underway right now and for working so well with Northbrook. We have been, get myself thrown off. Bugsy and Will and I have been working with the NIMTIC proposal to sort out what we might be able to do from that proposal in-house affordably and without a great deal of contortion over code changes. And so I'm going to ask the clerk to share. Our engineers came to the field with us and we looked for we have discussed as quote unquote low hanging fruit. So it's either end of Lund Terrace for pedestrian improvements. I did send these out after I got them. I don't know if anybody had time to see them, but we've got them here. So this is the river end of Lund Terrace where it joins Market. You're welcome to shift so you can see better. You'll recall that NIMTIC had, done artistic renderings recommending a roundabout here. They're not engineers, they're planning consultants. The on-the-ground reality of a traffic circle in this location, there are pitch issues and also vehicular concerns for emergency vehicles with an object in the center. They had proposed a sort of a planter in the center with directional signage. What Will and Bugsy have put forward, and Will has visualized here, is creating stop signs so that traffic in all three directions stops. that the corner at Market, let's see, the northeast corner of Lund and Market have painted lines. Right now, you can drive right along that railway and you don't, right along the guardrail on Lund to Market, and you can't necessarily see what's coming at you in terms of pedestrians or vehicles on Market Street. So the recommendation is to paint out a narrower driving lane in that big spot, have vehicles stop at the end of Lund Terrace, have vehicles stop at Market Street. Right now, the only stop sign is coming out of the train station right there. Thank you for guiding along. So adding a crosswalk, or I guess it's really enhancing the crosswalk that's there at that across Main Street at Lund, where the railroad station is. And then adding directional signage. There is some directional signage right now, sort of back where the arrow says, sorry, I gotta find it on the map. Not looking at Depot Square, hang on, so my brain isn't functioning. Here we go. It says proposed large sign, wayfinding sign. There are a couple of wayfinding signs there. They're deep in bushes. They are not terribly eye-catching, and they don't provide clarity beyond where the rail station is and where the chapel is. So if you would propose adding directional signage for Main Street, waterfront, rail station, etc., so that when you come to the end of Lund Terrace, you see it there directly in front of you, and then having additional signage on the stop sign, because we don't own a lot on the train station side, adding other directional signage below the stop sign on the same pole. Adding ADA ramp. Right now there's an ADA ramp to nowhere in the middle of the bridge, filling that in, and adding ADA ramps on either side of the one safe crosswalk. These are things the ADA pads and the concrete, et cetera, were budgeted for in the budget. Signs have been budgeted for, so it's not new expense. We've budgeted for paint. It's sort of taking that artistic rendering at this intersection and making it workable. So I'll pause here before we move on to the other intersection. So this intersection does require code modification. It requires adding a stop sign at Lund and a stop sign at Market. Discussion.
I think this is a really big improvement. So thanks for everyone for doing this work. Although I was getting very excited about the possibility of having a traffic circle. Here, I thought it'd be very European, and I love the idea of confusing every single driver. Came to this intersection even more than they're confused now. But I think this is
The other expense consideration of that particular proposal was that in order to optimize the amount of streetscape, the amount of street that's available, you'd end up building a retaining wall on the Market and Lund side and there's a house right there. Wow. So it would be a big impact to do that. So this is sort of a more common sense, basic approach.
I was not a fan of the roundabout. Not only do they can't drive through them, but I actually think that they're not very friendly. I think that that's why they're not good for pedestrians, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And for aiming to make it safer for pedestrians. So I like this a lot. I'm wondering if you talked about something stronger than the white hatching so that to stop people from kind of swinging around. Is there any way to make it elevated?
It could be a textured, it could be Bugsy, you're on the call, right? Still here?
So,
I don't know if he may have wandered off.
Well, just to say, if there's some way to make to encourage people to really slow down and make a right turn.
You could do rumble strip, that's just.
But generally, very happy about it.
You mean like when you go off the lane, out of lane on the highway and you hit the that kind of thing? Is that what you mean? The could be absolutely be there.
Okay, it took 27 seconds, but I unmuted myself. The markings on the road, Laura, would be preferable. I don't want anything raised. The minute you raise something, I can't plow it properly.
Yeah. Well,
That
maybe we can also, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
That would create a safety issue with icing and winter conditions. I'm a firm believer that this will definitely slow down traffic there. The commute in the morning is kind of scary if you stand down there and watch it. I like going with this and see what it gets us. As far as a roundabout, if we have to take that step, we have the option down the road.
Yeah, I think, yeah, that sounds good. Kim also.
Bugsy, what about the suggestion? I understand that you don't want to have anything raised. What about the suggestion of having a texture? You know, like on a highway when you leave the lane.
Like if you're referencing a wake up strip,
Yeah, like that.
you can plow that, but it's also a reservoir for
Yeah, okay. Water.
snow, water to get in. It will create ice. I mean, when we salt, it will get into it, but it'll continually refreeze. It's definitely, again, we have a lot of options with this. This is a trial and error to begin with, and we can make improvements down the road.
I mean, just as the stop sign on Market seems just in itself, so.
Yeah, like a logical, yeah.
Right? It's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
so
All right, so it sounds like we have round concept approval. Is that a fair statement? Yeah. Okay, so then let's go on. Actually, there is a member of the public who's raised hand. I don't know if the board wants to hear from the public in this moment on this proposal. I am open to that if other board members are.
for public comment at the end.
At the end of the discussion or at the end of this particular discussion or at the end of the meeting?
End of the meeting. I guess.
Okay. So Lloyd, I see your hand up.
Yes, it was very quick and yeah, okay, I can hang around. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so then shifting to the next one, the other end of Lund Terrace. Again, it was the graphics from Nimtic. Didn't think about things like where there are trees and where there are fire hydrants. And those are practical things we have to deal with on the ground. There is an existing crosswalk along Depot Square that needs to be properly painted. Taken their recommendation for a crosswalk across Main and put it on design here. On the south side, there is a tree in a pit. It is one of the Bradford pears. It is not long for this world, and the tree committee is fine with us taking that down to accommodate rounding off the corner of Lund and Main to make a proper ADA accessible spot entrance. And then on the other side by the fire hydrant, rounded off as well. There is an existing ADA pad onto the Depot Square crosswalk, but it would need to be widened so it could receive both crosswalks. I did speak to the owner of 37 Main Street to let him know that I was bringing this proposal forward and that I had talked to the tree board. He is willing to pay to grind down the stump that remains from the wishing tree. That was it, one tree pit, thank you, closer to the tunnel, and provide a new tree of the tree board's choosing. So this one actually, because of all of the existing no parking in this area around the train pickup, it doesn't require any code changes. What it may do is we may lose that. There's a 15-minute spot where I think Eliza is proposing to put a meter, right? And that still in your thinking on meter location?
In front of, the meter location I was proposing is in front of Bijou, because there's a wide spot in the sidewalk.
Oh, further up than I
Yeah,
imagined.
down here, it's kind of narrow,
Yeah,
so I
okay.
wouldn't, and very shaded, so I wouldn't put it there personally.
Okay, I misunderstood where you were,
Yeah.
where you were thinking. So there's the possibility that that 15-minute spot, not the possibility, the 15-minute spot would have to be moved back to accommodate the pedestrian clearance, so crosswalk. If we wanted to continue to have a 15-minute spot there.
The one thing about these proposals that I've wondered about is, you know, it's the spot for train pickup and also U-turns. And I don't, we gotta keep the U-turns, right? No real choice about that. The train pickups, I think, they're important. And I think if we look at pedestrians and crosswalks, I'd like to at least have a little session of, well, how can we mark a train pickup, like a short term, standing only here or something like that, and see how that might affect this area, because I think it's part of the confusion in this area.
I think in that area, no standing, no parking.
That's right.
It's not really a train pickup. People use it that way, but it's not appropriately used in such a way.
I certainly never stood there.
No.
So,
Looking for a friend?
yeah. If that's what it is,
That is exactly what it is. It's
Yeah.
no stopping, no standing.
but I would, what I do notice is when I have done a U-turn there legally and go back up, then sometimes there's people coming down Main Street, making a left on Lund Terrace, and there's some contention, who has the right of way there? The car doing the U-turn because they're kind of on a major street, or the car doing the left turn. So there maybe we want somehow a stop sign going east on Main Street right there, or something like that.
So
I don't
what
want to get
you're-
into
What
solutioning
you're opening right
now,
now
but
is solutions to a different problem, and I'm open to talking about solutions to a different problem, but right now there's nothing in this intersection that privileges pedestrians. And there's no visual cues for people trying to get across Main Street. So I think, I'm just proposing that what you're raising, they're good issues to raise. They don't preclude adding a crosswalk and adding ADA ramps in this location.
I agree.
I feel super strongly that we need a crosswalk here.
I do too.
I think it's a crazy intersection at our busiest spot with walkers, and there's nowhere else to put it. So I think, yeah, I agree that there's like more that ought to be figured out in this area, but in the meantime, adding crosswalks for safety and doing it within our own means feels like a win.
As well as, like we have now on Upper Main Street at Academy and Main, and up at Locust Ridge, there are actual signs for the fluorescent signs for the crosswalk. And we have budgeted to add as an experiment this summer, and Bugsy I'm not sure if you have ordered them yet or you are ordering them, the floppable signs that say yield pedestrians and crosswalk for all the way down Main Street. Great.
To be a little bit clear.
I got all three of them in today.
Oh, great.
Great, thanks. I wasn't against the crosswalk at all. In fact, what I mentioned is putting a stop sign that protects pedestrians even more.
I think that's something that we can think about. I would want to get advice on that, from a traffic perspective, from the officer in charge. I'm certainly open to ideas here, but right now, what I am prioritizing is pedestrian safety in this conversation.
I think it's a great location. People cross there all the time without a crosswalk, so I think it's a good proposal.
Thank you. So the Bugsy, the stop sign, you can start then at Main and Lund, but the other side is going to need a code change which we can wrap in with the other, any other code changes that we need in 126.
Okay. I will, I'll get the tree taken down, ground down. You're already in talks with the residential property owner at, I believe it's 37. You can work that out as far as grinding that empty pit down now. And, yeah, we can make that happen.
Amazing.
Thanks.
I actually would like to make a motion that we recognize the member of the public who wants to speak on this topic and not make them sit through the rest of the meeting. Is anyone else in support of that? Lloyd has raised his hand to ask to comment on what we're discussing right now. I am in favor of hearing it. I'm asking if anyone else would like to hear what he has to say at this time rather than making him sit till the end.
As long as it's on this topic, I think that's fair.
Okay,
We have a long agenda.
I made a motion, Teresa seconded it. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Lloyd, just so you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, appreciate it. Long day here. As we all have long days, but Lloyd Day, so I live at 34 West Street. I do want to just talk about this topic. I left the other topic to others and I had bad connection. So about this topic, looking at Lawn Terrace and Market, which is an intersection that I, living in the Lower Village, drive through often. I think that's, what's that?
We're pulling it back up for you, sorry.
Yeah, I think that's, it looks great to me. I wanted to make two suggestions related to it. For that white area where you were talking about rumble strips, could you consider those poles that you can run over if you have to, or you can remove them in the winter? Just a thought, because I know people will go through them, creatures of habit. And it's been that way for so many years. I just don't know if the white lines, like you say, will do anything. I do understand the snow plowing concerns and the potential for debris and liquid and such that would collect in the uneven surface if it were that. But I just was going to suggest those collapsible warning poles. The second, yeah, just a thought. I'm full of thoughts, as you know. The second thought I had, and it's a little further afield from this, a little bit to the north down Market Street. It always strikes me as really odd traffic design that you drive down Market Street on the right side and you have to cross over to the left side in front of the stop sign from New Street, where nobody stops very well, and then continue down Market Street on the left side of the street because of the parking. And it would be a simple fix, I think, that would be a lot safer. I don't know if there are other issues there might be with the neighbors, but a lot safer to just shift the parking down there at Northern Market Street to the west side rather than the east side, so that you're not kind of making this transition in front of people who are trying to turn from New to Market. That's all I had.
I'm trying to visualize what you mean. There isn't, Bugsy, is there parking on the south end of Market?
North end, sorry.
I'm
If I
talking,
said
asking the question and trying to understand what you mean about parking shift.
What Lloyd is talking about is, as you come down Market Street, make the right-hand turn off the bridge onto Market, come down right where the kayak place is, you have to shift from the east side of Market Street over to the west side because you have your cars parked on the east side of Market Street on the north side. What he's proposing is, instead of parking on the east side, you park on the west side. It's actually a brilliant idea.
thank you.
I'm ready to offer him an application, okay?
Thank you.
We
Just seems practical to me, and it's where you shift from the two-way street to the one-way street. But thank you.
Now I understand. We can look at it. We do have chapter 126 changes related to Northern and High Street coming up, so we can, if the board
Northern,
decides that
okay,
that's a brilliant idea, that's something we could do at that time. Thank you for the recommendation. Go ahead.
thank you.
One of our very diligent members of the public who's here this evening has noted an issue potentially with the turning radius for, I assume, emergency vehicle. If we moved the parking from one end to the other.
I'm like
one
one side
side
to the other.
behind the
Yeah.
opening
Yeah.
here.
Have a hard time making that turn market to me
Yeah.
as it is. That I think of
Market.
to me, yes, they have a hard time.
So at the end.
Right,
Here.
they have sometimes a hard time making
I
that turn
agree.
at that point. Moving the parked cars to the west side may make that turn
Okay,
worse.
so it's something
That's
we have to
you-
look at.
Right,
Which we would do anyway. We would consult with you and with the officer in charge in the ambulance corps when we do that. Thank you for
Good
raising
idea.
that.
Yeah,
I
We
moved back and
understand
forth.
language, okay. Thanks. All right, moving on to, thank you very much for that discussion, for being patient with it. Moving on to the rest. Water and wastewater. Landon has started cross-training on the wastewater side. He loves the work, and is doing really well, and it seems to be creating a good support balance in the two departments. We have, but,
Oh, can I just say for both Bugsy and Matt and the water crew, just a big thanks for the improvements on Garden Street.
oh,
The
yes,
the pipe and to a resident driveway, like big thank you from all the residents.
it was a service line that had,
Yep.
that had failed there.
And a long time coming on addressing a paving issue, so.
That was the
Big thanks.
the genius of John Pizzella standing on site saying, I can make this better. Great. We have new signs on the way. Some of them are recycled existing signs. Some of them we had to order new to replace the no trespass signs that we're required to have by law at the reservoir and were stolen. They'll be installed in a different manner. And we also need to come into compliance with water impoundment signage for the DEC at our other locations. They've all been ordered at one time. We have on the agenda a pump purchase authorization from the wastewater side, which I'm gonna let Greg explain because no matter what, I butcher what Matt is trying to say.
Superintendent Krug is requesting an additional 6-inch turbine pump. Similar to the pump we purchased in the November-December timeframe of 2024. That original pump was for finished water. This pump meters the water that exited the water treatment plant. The new request is for a meter to meter water entering the water treatment plant. Without this meter, he is not able to remotely manage the chemical processes necessary to clarify the water. So that requires him and his guys to be on site, just more time on the weekends, more time on evenings, days, and things like that. So this pump will help them automate the processes again and set things right in the water treatment plant.
Discussion, that was very helpful. Yes. Good to have someone track, right? Any other discussion? Concern sole source, right? Which is why
Are all these costs one time or some recurring?
This is a one-time cost.
but it is a piece of equipment that we have either repaired or replaced in the past. I mean, it's the water treatment plant, the wastewater treatment plant is from 1968. They're gonna need to be replaced. Would I like to make a motion?
I make a motion to approve the bid from T Sales for the 6-inch Neptune.
Good. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thanks for the backup there. Right. From the fire company's report, I want to congratulate. Fire company had its annual public protection classification review. These are unannounced and random visits from inspectors related to how well prepared a fire company is to respond to fires. We get a rating on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being the highest rating. Cold Spring got a 5, which is impressive for a department of its size.
So the lowest.
No, the lowest number is the highest rating. Did I say it backwards? A 1 is the best you can get.
Okay.
And we
Cold
got
Spring got a 5, which
One
is,
the worst?
no, 1 to 10.
Oh, okay, you
Let's start again.
Okay.
Sorry. Reset. Sorry, I'm tired. Their fire companies are rated on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being the highest and best. Cold Spring landed a 5, which is impressive for a department of its size. And it's a reflection of the professionalization that's there. The reason it's valuable is that the ISO rating translates to lower insurance premiums for the fire company. So that's a cost savings. And I'm just saying congratulations and clearly the most confused and with lack of numeracy at every point. Okay, standing boards, I wanted to confirm that the code enforcement department is following up on the letter from the historic district and is issuing violations, which is a good thing. On reports, quick summary, because we've got lots of business. Eliza's working on metered parking improvements. I'm working on the streets and sidewalks chapter updates. Laura and I have been moving the needed dam acquisitions forward. Tweeps and Greg have been working on the employee handbook updates, and we'll soon have a draft. Aaron, bless him, has been working on the migration of the website to a new and improved platform. So that's moving ahead. We did receive the draft climate adaptability report from Fuss and O'Neill. Laura and I got it. I have not read it yet. We need to read it, digest it, and then we can share out. But that's pursuant to the grant we applied for, $75,000 grant. We were awarded for that last year. Anything to add? Okay. One question. Friday, the county executive holds quarterly meetings with the supervisors and mayors and a topic department at each meeting. This quarter's topic is local history, municipal historians, and an update on the Revolutionary Putnam County program. I cannot attend. It's Friday from 10 to noon. I don't even like to attend in my stead. Okey doke. So now we're on to business. The moment you've been waiting for all evening, Josh. We have a resolution before us to declare East Belvedere a public road by use.
Oh, we have to do the recreation.
Yeah, Recreation Commission.
Application. Oh, under rec, sorry. Sorry, no, you're just gonna have to wait a little bit longer. Thank you for the correction. Okay, so, you wanna talk us through, we have the wedding on October 18th?
Really nothing much to report, just standard wedding
At the bandstand.
at Bandstand. They're having the reception at Hudson House. That seems to be the reason why we get a lot of weddings at Bandstand now.
Thank you, Craig.
Yes, thank you, Craig. So everything has been, vetted through everybody. Everyone seems to be okay with it. So, they'll be handing in their certificate of insurance hopefully by October 1st. And we should be good to go.
Make a motion regarding the Kita wedding.
I'll make a motion to approve the application for the Keto wedding, October 18th, 2025.
Second. Favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Lillian. The next one I have questions about. So it's an application from Care of DC Animal Rescue, 501c3, to raise awareness about our rescue. They're asking to be in the bandstand?
No, they're asking to be at the waterfront.
But where? Because
Greg and I discussed with them that they would be in the circle around the scoop. At the scoop,
where cars turn around?
where it's gonna be blocked off, because when you do a bandstand application, that area gets blocked off anyway, so.
Okay. Are they gonna have the dog, are they have dogs with them?
There will be dogs in crates there.
I am not feeling good about supporting this on the 27th of July in the open sun.
13th of July.
This says 7/27.
Yeah, she wrote the wrong date. She wanted it for Sunday.
Okay, July 13th is still really hot to be sitting with dogs and crates in the open sun. I personally am not comfortable with it.
July 13th, that's this weekend?
Yeah,
But other thoughts?
A good point.
Excellent point, actually.
I feel like that's.
I'm not gonna support this one.
Right,
Would
I
someone
feel
else
that-
like to make a motion?
Can we talk to them about choosing another date later in the fall?
I mean, you're welcome to choose another date, but we're not gonna,
Or a different location,
this is,
in the
this is,
shade,
yeah.
in the
And
bandstand.
also like more than 3 days before.
There's that.
All right,
we can ask her if she's open to other dates.
okay, so I would make a motion to decline the application for care of DC Animal Rescue on July 13th. Second, all in favor? Aye. Last was a request from fire company. It's an annual request. That's really fun. Closing off Church Street to traffic on Friday, July 25th, so they can have their fire academy graduation ceremony and barbecue discussion.
Sounds great.
I do want to add that this has already been vetted by the officer in charge. He has no problem with the change in traffic pattern.
If there is a time change, we usually do it later. It's earlier this year due to graduation being earlier this year.
Keep everybody cool.
Yeah,
Water.
yeah. Well, last year we had a problem that our caterer, because the time change wasn't reflected last year, our caterer got there late. There was a whole, so we're trying to get our caterer there on time so he can get the girls started. So when graduation's over.
Someone like to make a motion?
I will make a motion to approve the request to close Church Street for the Junior Fire Academy graduation.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
You can have the bubble machine?
Unfortunately, the bubble bus is not available.
Noted that before I made a motion to approve it.
That is not my purview. I just asked closer around. Supposedly there's possibly a bouncy house in the works.
Okay, all right. I'll talk to my people.
And of course, any and all of the village board is invited to attend graduation that day.
Thank you.
Thank you. I got out of order. On reports, sorry about that. And we've now hit rec, so now we drop to board business. And we have resolution 24-2025, declaring East Belvedere a public road by use. As a review, this is a short street, that has a conflicting public record regarding its status as a public or a private road. Village has maintained it for decades with varying degrees of success. There is a subdivision on that street now that will require the expansion of the water line there. Right now, we don't have what we need in terms of jurisdiction to control how the length of the street gets put back. And because of our variable handling of the street over the time, the village does not have clean hands. And the village attorney has recommending that we declare East Belvedere a street by use. We did have a letter signed by every resident on the street, we had in front of us when we talked about this a few weeks ago. So tonight we have the resolution. Any discussion?
Been a long time coming.
Someone like to make a motion? Do you have to read it? The roll call vote.
Okay. Resolution 2024, sorry, 24-2025, declaring East Belvedere Street a road by use. The following resolution was offered by myself, trustee Woods, for adoption and seconded by trustee Starbuck. To wit, whereas the East Belvedere Street is a small dead-end street located in the village, and whereas historical records show that East Belvedere Street was created sometime around 1928 as part of a subdivision, but the street itself and the land under it was never dedicated to the village. And whereas although East Belvedere has never been dedicated as a public street, the Putnam County tax maps show it as such. And whereas the New York State Village Law 6-626 provides that all lands within the village which have been used by the public as a street for 10 years or more continuously shall be a street with the same force and effect as if it had been duly laid out and recorded as such. And whereas East Belvedere has been used by general public as a street for decades, and whereas available records show that the village has consistently maintained East Belvedere Street for decades by regularly filling potholes and resurfacing the street, and whereas the village board believes it is in the best interest of the village and the village residents for the village to continue maintaining East Belvedere Street. Now, therefore, it hereby be resolved that the village formally recognizes that East Belvedere Street as a public street within the meaning of New York State Village Law 6-626, and be therefore further resolved that the width of East Belvedere Street shall be 20 feet and run a length of 408 feet from its intersection with Morris Avenue, New York State Route 9W.
9D, it should be 9D.
Oh, 9. And be it further resolved that consistent with New York State Village Law 6-626, the recognition of East Belvedere Street as a public street by use does not obligate the village to improve East Belvedere to comply with the minimum street specifications set forth in section 108-14 of the village code. Nor does this action obligate the village to take responsibility for private appurtenances that may lie beneath the road, including water lines, sewer lines, or other utilities. On a roll call.
Just before we vote, that last resolved was the hurdle that previous boards couldn't get past. How to bring the street up to width by code, et cetera, how to deal with the water line. So all of that, this is how we get past that hurdle that existed before. Clerk, can we have a roll call vote?
Trustee Starbuck. Trustee Woods. Trustee Frymark. Trustee Bozee. Mayor Foley.
Aye.
I believe the ayes do have it.
Thank you. Yay. Thank you for being patient and suspend. Thank you. Okay. Clearwater request. So C Street did not make any requests for November. Clearwater has come forward with another request related to, in celebration of the Storm King decision that prevented Con Ed from destroying Storm King Mountain to build a hydroelectric power plant. November 7th is the 60th anniversary. So they would like to do public education sales and a plan for the development and the grassroots, publication sale about the grassroots plan for development. Public education sales about the plan for the development and the grassroots movement to protect Storm King. So they are throwing out to us that there are no charter slots on that weekend, but they are open to charters that weekend when it's not being used for educational purposes. And if a charter does add, they will pay the docking fee for that day. And they're open to requests and suggestions from the community and particularly from schools for suggestions related to programming discussion.
Curious, Veterans Day is the 11th. Is that the day it's celebrated? Or is it like
Veterans Day is on the 11th, the 11th hour of the 11th.
it will be
day,
on the 11th, right?
month.
It's not like the day before, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, just curious. That we go.
Any concerns with the application?
One of my favorite stories about this area.
Yeah, because of Storm Kings. Would you like to make a motion? Sure.
I make a, Jason's correct.
Just wondering if you guys were going to make a decision on the docking fee.
Oh, I'm sorry. The proposal is they're asking to have it waived unless a charter should be identified, and then they will pay the docking fee related to the charter.
I make a motion to approve the docking application from Clearwater, Hudson River, Clearwater for arrival 11/16/25, departing 11/10/25, with the docking fee waived unless there is a charter. We'll pay as stated.
Okay, second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
You know, Aaron, I forgot to put it on the agenda, but while we're talking about Clearwater, they asked for a letter of support for a grant they're pursuing to restore the hull. And you had mentioned you'd be willing to draft that. Are you still willing and able to do that? Right on. I don't remember the deadline in my head right now, but we'll check. It's soon, but it's not, okay. So we'll connect on that. Thank you for offering to do that. And is the board comfortable with us sending a letter of support? Yeah, okay. Okay. The next is a discussion, we're not making any decisions, of proposed code changes to be made to accommodate two things. One, the upcoming renewal of our contract with Royal. And then two, finally wrapping up recreation. So let's focus on garbage first. So I had originally proposed that let's take the litter chapter, which had the references to the village collecting garbage and work from that. But the deeper I got to it, it's one of the really old chapters. Again, it's from 1930, began in 1931. It is a jumble and a mess and a tangle, and to make it reasonable would have taken more effort than I have in me. So my proposal is to remove from the littering chapter, section 5917, preparation for garbage for collection, and 5919, deposit restricted. We have an existing recycling code. My suggestion is that we repeal that code and incorporate solid waste, including recycling, into a single garbage chapter. They follow the model of Beacon, which works with Royal, and I looked at Red Hook and Hyde Park, I think was the other one. The village attorney did get back with comments this afternoon, adding language regarding enforcement, etc. So I guess my first question to you is, how are we feeling about the proposal to edit littering to remove reference to garbage and it is garble, repeal recycling? Since it would come into garbage, recycling and yard waste.
To make one chapter?
Yeah. Fine. That's that, go forward with public hearing. Erin, you had comments, but them was just hilarious to me in terms of a grammar mistake. I corrected that. Are there other discussion on the garbage chapter?
I think just more generally than I could fit in the Word document. I think there's two just broad observations about the way that you're proposing structuring it.
Mm-hmm.
One is that there's necessarily a lot of repetition, right? Because like, okay, garbage, you have this bin, you can only get one bin, unless you get more than one bin, and then same with recycling, same thing. And I think if we structure it in terms of, here's the different things that we are responsible for as the village's obligation, and here's what people have to do in order to participate in that. Splitting that up will end up making it a lot clearer to understand.
I did try it. Sorry.
That's the first thing. Second,
Okay.
but why don't we just start there?
I did try it that way, but there are differences in where did it fall apart? It fell apart with yard waste and holiday greens. I'm open to that if you would like to make the next draft.
I'm not against the Christmas.
I know that's not what you meant. It sounded like everyone has to have a Christmas tree and maintain it, yeah. I am open to that. You will need to make the next draft, however. I have done what I am going to do in terms of drafting.
Okay, that's fine, I'm happy to take. So that was the first thing. The second one is similarly, I think there's a good delineation between what the village is doing and we can stay in code and other things which are the responsibility of the hauling contractor, which we don't really want to put in a village code, right? Like, how much does it cost? Or
We don't have how much it costs.
so I think there's, again, it's a good attempt. But we're not at this stage totally clean about what's there or what's not. I mean, it does say, hey, look, we're gonna make a contract and we'll state that elsewhere, like how much it costs for a second bin. But then it also says, we're gonna prorate this for you, which I don't think we are gonna prorate it for them unless the contract states it's gonna be prorated. So I think just to how they're billed, we're saying is gonna be a function of the contract that we make.
So,
But we also say, but you're gonna be prorated. And it's just like, we don't need to have that in there.
I think that's a
Right.
question that needs to go to the village attorney. The reason that there is an underlying reason that how people are charged and for what is laid out this way in this chapter. And it's not about cost. It's the specificity about what size bin and how much it can weigh. Because this accomplishes what we could not accomplish in the first round, which is provide equitable service across every tax parcel. It defines what the village will provide under this contract to each parcel, which is one 65-gallon garbage bin and one 95-gallon recycling bin. Anything beyond that, you have to get it from the company. You have to enter separate contract. So this will mean that we treat multifamily complexes equally now. We will treat commercial properties equally now, and we will not have residents bearing the weight of overages in other areas. Everybody gets the same, every tax parcel gets the same service. So that is the reason for the specificity. So that we have that clarity for what you are getting from the village for what you're getting for what the village pays for. Does that make sense?
That makes sense, and I have no problem with that at all. I mean, I think that's positive. What I'm saying is, section 3A3.
Hang on, let me get there. Three, additional garbage.
Additional garbage receptacles of various sizes shall be available from the hauling contractor at an additional cost to the parcel owner based on the pricing according to the village contract with the hauling contract. All fine, great.
Mhm.
Annual one-time billing for additional garbage receptacles will be managed by the hauling contractor directly to the parcel owner. Also great. Billing shall be prorated on a 12-month basis from the commencement of the date of the village's fiscal year. We don't need that part. That is a function of the contract, not a function of.
Okay, so are you just
That's all I'm saying.
taking a long way to say delete the last sentence? Right?
It was a short way of saying, so we choose, but yeah. that is
Okay, let me ask about that. I get the concept. Let me ask about it. However, because part of that is the reason that it's there is so that if someone moves to the village in June instead of, or I don't know, and halfway through the year, that they're not filled. That's the way the code in Beacon is laid out. I simply follow that pattern. I don't know if it needs to be there or if it's just in the contract. I don't care either way where it ends up, but let me ask the question to make sure it doesn't need to be here.
Yeah, I think that's the right thing for for how the villagers should be billed, but I think that should be in our negotiation. Contractor. not our
Okay, so let me ask I get your point. Let me ask the question. Anybody else?
I have 2 points. One is small. My recycling bin and garbage bin are the same size as each other, and I think that's what, we just got the regular bins, and they're 2 different sizes in here, and so,
Oh, should it
We
be
should
65 or 65?
or not, or I think they're both bigger than 5. I think,
We gave people options, yeah, there's.
well, whatever we do, I think we don't wanna create a scenario where half of the village needs new garbage bins again. So we should
I
just
get what you're saying.
just confirm that
Confirm
what
what
the standard issue was.
Yep.
And then hopefully go forward with that. We don't have a lot of.
I thought it was 65 and I thought it was 95 and 65. Or, I don't remember what I thought, but I thought it was the opposite of what Jim Constantino edited in the thing. So we'll confirm to make sure it's right. Because we want it to be what we
Yeah.
originally started with.
Yeah. And then the other one is, it was really helpful to hear that explanation about the kind of like equal for parcels. I guess I was thinking that we were also going to have some way of addressing the trash that's created by businesses that comes to Main Street that is managed by that then becomes municipal trash, to like create some way for businesses to take it back into their own trash bins. Is there
Well,
any
they shouldn't be
opportunity?
So right
No,
now.
no, I mean, well, like all the takeout that comes from Main Street businesses, there's some that create more than others. Is there any opportunity to require receptacles at a business?
Yes.
Is there any way, is there any opportunity for that in the
Yes, and
chapter?
here's how that will work. It will not be us doing that monitoring. There is a section on unlawful disposal of garbage material or other debris. In disposing of garbage. Special. Specific reference to public bins. Depositing or attempting to deposit garbage or recyclable materials or any other waste from any commercial establishment or residence in any public receptacle or a receptacle belonging to another parcel within the village of Cold Spring. Now we have the language, and what happens now is that Royal assesses their pickup, and when they see in particular bins, when they see, a particular business's branded stuff piling up in one bin, they will approach that business and say, you need to enter into a contract for another solution for that, whether it's a dumpster or a conditioned bin. So that you're managing your own waste. You can't stop people from walking away from a shop and putting garbage away. Putting garbage in a bin. And also, as Treats pointed out the other day, you can't stop stupid. Somebody's gonna shove a pizza box into the top of a basket at some point in the weekend. Regardless. We cannot create a law for that, unfortunately. Stupidity. I don't know if that helps answer the question, but that's how it would be, that's how it will be approached.
Yeah, and we're still working on that.
Yeah, it's a draft.
Yeah, so great.
So
So I'll
there's-
read that, and if I think of something else that
Yeah,
can contribute to it.
We next meet in 2 weeks. We do need this in place to be able to agree to the terms of the contract, so I would ask people to get back. Aaron, if you're gonna redraft, it needs to be done in the next week.
I'll try that.
Okay. So by next, well, we're not meeting again for 2 weeks, but if you could circulate any language, a recommendation so that we can prepare a next draft to approve to be ready for public hearing. Okay. Anything else on garbage? The next session is the rec chapter. Tweets drafted this forever and ever ago. We got distracted by other things and didn't finish it. There were a couple of things outstanding. First of all, why are we replacing the recreation chapter? Because the chapter is a cut and paste from Austining. And it is written for a municipality that has a recreation department where employees are hired and budgets are established and that stuff that our rec commission doesn't even do. And it was sparse on what our recreation commission actually does. And the goal from when we first took office was to get more the rec commission, get them away from them reviewing events that we have to approve anyway. So to clean up their process, identify their powers and responsibilities, our powers and responsibilities. Not this configuration of the Recreation Commission, but a previous configuration of the Recreation Commission entered into an agreement with Haldane that the Board of Trustees did not review. We are the only ones authorized to enter into contracts. So that is clarified in this under powers and responsibilities. The event coordinator's position is identified. Where we had outstanding issues to discuss was on village parks, the hours of operations. We had dawn to dusk on all of them. Eliza, in the comments on the document, raised the point on Waterfront Park that people do stroll late. And could that park be dawn to 11 p.m.? You raised questions about consistency. I'm bringing it here so we can make a determination on this. Stop.
I mean, I
agree
just
with you,
think the
Eliza.
rules should follow what the function is. Like, people are there every night, so to like suddenly make a rule that's like, no, you're not allowed doing what we've always done, that has never had a problem, so far as I know. Seems-
This was just what the rec commission proposed when they drafted it. I agree with you. Anyone else?
Dawn to dusk is just like typical park language. I don't disagree with the fact that people are there after whatever dusk is. I don't know that it doesn't, but I don't know that dusk means that if you're there at 11 that you are breaking the rules. I just didn't understand it like that. But if you think that that's the case, then I don't have an issue with it.
I find it.
Aaron? I will make that in the review, in the public review draft. And the other, we have an outstanding, we're waiting for feedback from the village attorney. This is the same docking language on page 8 that is in the current permit. It says all docking permits may be revoked by the village board at any time, either for cause, such as engaging in prohibited activity, or without cause. He raised the question of, is there a reason with there without clauses included? I told him what I knew from history, and how it has been, remember last year we used it when a vessel docked under a 501c3, but it was actually a chartered event, and then refused to pay the permit. We revoked the docking permit.
Isn't that cause?
That's cause. I don't.
It's a lawyer question.
Yeah, it's a lawyer question. I don't see any reason for it to say without cause, and I don't know why it's written like that from the beginning. Any other feedback? Okay. All right, so then we'll make these edits and this one's ready to go to the public. We have a parade chapter. Rec and the events coordinator had asked us to put parade in the Recreation Commission. I didn't realize until looking that we actually do have a parade chapter, but it was completely arbitrary. It was one of the ones remaining from 1931, and it said that parades are at the sole discretion of the mayor. It's not appropriate. So I asked Greg to do a little research and what other municipalities do, has put forward a draft. I have thoughts, I'm sure others do, but why don't we start, Greg, with you walking us through what were the sources and what was the lot?
I looked at a few different villages locally, Village of New Paltz, Village of Rhinebeck, Village of Bronxville, and the Village of Ossining. I took heavily from the Village of Bronxville. Theirs was the most recent and current, so it addressed some things that I think could help us. So essentially, I took both the permitting process and the application process from Bronxville, modified it for how we utilize our resources internally. And then, because Bronxville has a village manager, we have a village clerk, there was modification necessary for that, obviously working under the purview of the board instead of independent and in conjunction.
I had a few items of feedback, but I'll hold and let others speak first.
I had one item, one main item. There's two revocation of permit sections that are identical. So that's like actually, that's not my name. Just a clerical thing. But then there's,
Section A.
is that the one that I have? Sorry. Okay, here it is. At the very end, part G is as like obstructing streets by assembling. And then there's fines associated or punishment associated, which includes a year of prison, which I think is draconian. So I don't think that that should be in there. But then there's also penalties for offenses, which seems to supersede that need and has 15-day imprisonment, which I suppose is better. So we have to pick one of those. But then I would also be interested in, is $250 amount for fine.
I had similar feedback on those sections. 250 is kind of a pretty standard. Most municipalities, and we included, and other code revisions have taken out the reference to imprisonment. No one's getting sent to prison for assembly.
No, and I
parade anyway.
Yeah.
So I had the same. It's just all, although it's old code formats are like that. Right, it's just how it comes down.
I think Greg wants to prison.
Well, if you don't think that that is a possibility, you cannot levy that as punishment.
Not up this anyway, so
Or
the
execution
justice.
Well, it's capital. But I got you. The
I know, like-
justice is going to work in the purview of our local law, though, of our code. So if there's no provision for imprisonment in the code, he cannot imprison someone.
I guess it's a question. Under what condition would we want to imprison someone for assembling in a public street without a permit?
If that conduct creates an unsafe environment, or if they're a habitual offender, right? So if they've done it repeatedly, and they're just paying the $250 fines, and they said, I'm gonna be back tomorrow, maybe you need to do something stronger. But with that, if you take the provision out, you're not able to do that.
I agree with Laura that it feels, I get that logic and it feels draconian.
I mean, the 1 year, certainly.
Up to.
But like that, maybe the 15 days. I don't know. I think most of the other stuff, if they did something really bad, it would be
There'd be other charges.
there'd be other charges if they drove in a parade, like something that was dangerous. I just felt strongly about the 1 year.
And I think that the repetition, because this is coming from another code, I think that the repetition in G relates to that particular section of code, and then 83 applies to the whole thing. But I don't think it needs to be both places, one or the other. I'm okay with, as a compromise, I myself am okay with to a maximum of 15. Because he's right, the clerk, the justice works, not he, the clerk is correct, the justice works within the parameters of the local law. I think 1 year is excessive. I prefer to see it out, but I'm okay with 15 if people feel it needs to be there. Happy with that? Yeah, but how do you feel about the 15 days?
15, I mean,
I mean, you're not gonna have to enforce it, the justice is.
yeah,
Take a moment to understand what other.
it's, go ahead, all you need to do is read code from any municipality, it's
That's
standard
exactly-
language, it doesn't mean we have to repeat it.
Feels like
All right.
something old fashioned that like you shouldn't go to prison
I
for
agree.
reading at all.
Can we come, I'd like to come back to some, that is substantive, but to get away from the question of imprisonment, which is pretty far from what actually happened with parade. I had, well, Aaron, what is your comment?
Well, also, stepping back and looking at this, I mean, in the last year, we had a big parade down. Not permanent, but it was, presumably a political, statement, demonstration. This chapter doesn't mention political demonstration, or, anything having to do with, people's right to speech. I don't know whether that just automatically gets exempted, or if it's something that needs to be mentioned specifically.
I think you're right, it needs to be, that was one of my comments as well.
Okay.
Is that it needs to be, that needs to be addressed.
And I think one of the principles here is that we don't want to be legislating things that we really should not be legislating, right?
Correct. I don't think I was trying to do that. I think that needs, you're right, that exemption does need to be made, and I think, I'm sure that another code has language control related to the public assembly. Like, this section shall not apply to the next page, page 8301, it could be exercising of First Amendment rights. But yes, it's the draft.
But exercising your First Amendment rights isn't parading down the street. Right? It's not obstructing traffic. Those aren't your First Amendment rights. Those activities are protected.
Correct, but I think what Aaron is saying, that you wanna make clear that you're not attempting to limit that activity, which we're not. What is, tell me your,
No, I'm just, so you're going to call out protected free speech as exception E,
we do in the sign code,
right?
Mhm.
But then you become the arbiter of that, which, you know what I mean? Like,
we're the arbiter already in
Are
terms of
the
signage.
arbiters, that's our responsibility.
and isn't that what the permitting process is for? Right? So,
So the village got sued, just to give you an example.
Sure.
The signage code didn't used to refer to the exemption for political speech. And the village got sued heartily and lost heartily, because exactly that distinction wasn't in the sign code and wasn't in the historic district code. So, I take Aaron's point that making distinct what you are regulating and what you're not, just like we did last year when we updated the sign code. Important.
There's a demonstration every Saturday morning over at St. Mary's that often is on the sidewalk, and I do not want to be a part of saying, hey, now, great, now you have to start getting permits for this every 10th time.
That's not, I don't think that's what anybody wants.
Uh,
Is it?
No.
I-
Is that a parade?
that's
Well,
not,
we just need to
Arguably,
make sure-
arguably by the definition, it might be, but I think we should be clear about, what it is that the scope we're trying to have here.
Okay, so,
Right.
I don't think anyone's disagreeing with you.
I'm making sure the clerk understands my point of view as well.
I think the clerk does. I would ask that you, having raised the position, you help determine the edits that are appropriate in a draft to get us there. Other items, the timeline under application, not less than 7 business days for a parade. It's not enough. The window that's being set here is no more than 6 months, but not less than 7 days. We need to have time to review traffic plan, et cetera.
Or what if? Okay. What, I don't know, I was thinking about like, the high school when the championships, blah, blah, blah. you know, and they wanna have a parade. Week.
People are allowed to drive down a public street. You mean, oh, you mean if, like, when Helen calls ahead and says, we wanna do.
Right.
Oh, yeah, well. Guess we have to think about that, because what we don't want is like. I don't know, who would propose a parade out of nowhere, but. We don't want someone proposing a parade. With no time for the officer in charge to review. That's, I think what you've brought up is a good example. And I see why you go there. Other thoughts? He hasn't looked at this chapter yet. That's another thing, is he needs to review it. This is an initial review by us.
Okay, so.
Put that. Under issuance of permit, the. 1C, 1B, and C. Seem. Too big for Cold Spring. We only ever have one officer on duty unless we assign people to a parade route. So I think we can modify that. Thoughts? Same with the conduct of the parade or assembly will not require the diversion of so great a number of police officers, doesn't apply to them. I understand the spirit. Thoughts? Bueller?
I mean, I'm not, I don't know if there's another example in our code that lists how many numbers, but like this many considerations. Right?
Yes.
If we're, I think as it's enumerated here, it's not clear to me who it's helping. I think, there's gonna be a lot of exceptions. To Pete's point. And I think we wanna allow those, but
Yes.
we also want the authority, so, saying, for example, one of the things the board should consider is how much time we were given to plan this parade. Then we can take it into consideration, but it doesn't necessarily need to be like a requirement pulled out of this.
Yeah, well, I think that's
Right.
why this is a range, right?
So, yeah, I think I feel the issuance of permit thing can be greatly simplified, but.
Okay, and right now, as L is written, it would knock out the Halloween parade, so we need to modify that. The public, parade or public assembly will not commence and or terminate after sunset, so that won't work for Halloween. But it's what happens when you're adapting a code from another place to yours, you have to adapt it. So this is the first draft and this is the process. It's not bad. It's just that we're starting from something and making it our own. Yeah, I don't think item O is necessary either. There are sufficient parking spaces near the site of the parade or public assembly to accommodate the number of vehicles reasonably expected. Or we can't provide that for
Never.
anything.
That's never going to be the case.
What if they O comes out? Parking on parade route. Got modified to officer in charge of one spot, but not the other. And then there needs to be an enforcement section. Needs to be an 83-4.
I think also, is that J?
J.
Yeah, if we've already issued a permit for another parade. Another parade would not interfere with the parade that we permitted for, because we wouldn't permit for another parade, right? Am I not reading that correctly? But I feel like.
This is this is from Bronxville, and there are more neighborhoods than one. There's more parade routes than one. So,
But then, yes.
Does that need to happen?
I mean,
Of course, it's something we're gonna consider. Like, think about when the running race, the hub run race used to be on the same day as Community Day. We timed them so that they weren't happening at the same time.
right.
That's the concept there.
And two permitted.
Yeah,
for that.
it just needs to be, this needs
Okay,
to be
that's
cleaned
fine.
up and made more specific. So my question is, Greg needs to have feedback. We've had feedback tonight. There are specific things that you are concerned about, Aaron, that I agree with, and if would like for you to help provide the language that we need. I think we can learn a lot from the sign code. Are you willing to do that work?
Yeah,
Do the
is there,
cross-check?
yeah, I was looking, I couldn't be, I got lost in the shuffle, but what version of comment on?
Can you say that again?
Is there a version that we can comment on?
It
Like
was
on
sent-
SharePoint?
It was sent on the SharePoint, wasn't it? Or did you just send it around by email?
I sent it via email.
So
I can
Put it on the
carry
SharePoint?
these are always really helpful to have on SharePoint, so we can just see each other's comments.
So what, so
So once I get that on
On the-
SharePoint, then I'm happy to comment.
there's a code folder that where the others were, you just drop it in that one.
Yeah.
We have the ongoing comment chapter, someone can drop it in that
No
one,
problem.
drag and drop. Okay. So let's set a goal for when we're gonna. I would love to be able to wrap this up at the same time that we do wrap on all the other ones. Do we feel like people can give comments on this chapter over the next week? For us to consider? And then we discuss it at the next meeting? Yeah. Okay, great. Okay, Bill, yep, getting there. You got them. Okay.
So, we want to build, 7952 for the current year, in the amount of $155,000. $155,805. Sorry.
Second. All in favor?
Aye. And make a motion to approve bills for prior year, but batch 7951, in the amount of $25,430.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Have minutes from 6/5, 6/12. In 2024 and 5/1/2025. I have marked up, Greg, I don't have any content issues, but I've marked up the spelling of people's names
Oh, 6/12.
on the
6/5.
June 5th one. How does Kate spells her name Cadah, but how does she spell Goulet? Anyone know? All right, so just check on her, that, and I'm not sure how to spell her last name.
I had a request for that one to remove the like quotations around some of the comments. Because I think all of these are summaries of what they said, and so I don't think that we need to like the quotations. They have been maybe have
Bancho quarries
the many and too much, too high and devastated.
So why don't we have this one come? Do you want this one come back to us, or do we want to
Can we
approve
just
it with the
approve
changes?
with those changes? Keep it going.
I'm fine with that.
That's okay with others.
Someone like to make a motion? This one is June 5th, 2024.
Make a motion to approve minutes of June 5th, 2024. With the edits noted by trustee Posey, taking out the quotation
And the mayor on the,
and the mayor and the spelling names.
second, all in favor?
Aye.
June 12th, I don't have. June 12th. Anyone else? Make a motion to accept the minute, June 12th, 2024. All in favor?
Aye.
The next one, it says monthly meeting, but I think it means it should be business meeting. This is when we had a daytime meeting to approve bills on May 21st. And Aaron, please, and I were the only ones there. So we're the only three who can vote. With the modification of business meeting, I would make a motion to accept minutes of Wednesday, May 21st, 2025.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Yep, there's just
Can I get?
two abstentions. Sweet said aye.
Oh. Three, abstain.
You're abstaining.
Okay, good. All right, and now I would make a motion to enter executive session. What?
Well, can we close the?
Oh, the public hearing. Thank you. Forgot about the public hearing. So I make a motion to close the public hearing on the moratorium. All in favor? Aye. So, and discussion, I would make a motion to accept the moratorium for local law to establish the moratorium as written.
Second.
Favor?
I think there's a
The resolution.
Oh, is there a resolution? Sorry. I think we're all getting pretty tired. Here it is. 25, resolution number 25-2025, adopting local law 2/2025, establishing a moratorium on following resolution was offered by Mayor Foley for adoption and seconded by me, Laura Posey. Whereas the Village of Cold Spring Board of Trustees has caused to be prepared a draft of the local law to enact a moratorium on food trucks. Whereas the Village of Cold Spring Board of Trustees held duly noticed public hearing on the draft local law on July 9th, 2025. Whereas the Village of Cold Spring Board of Trustees has complied with the requirements of New York State General Business Law, Section 35, as it applies to the adoption of draft local law. Now therefore be it resolved that local law number 2/2025 is hereby adopted, and the village clerk is authorized and directed to take all of the necessary actions to complete the local law adoption procedure, including filing said local law with the New York State Office, Secretary of State, and so on.
Trustee Starbuck,
I vote nay.
trustee Woods.
Aye.
Trustee Frymark,
Nay.
trustee Posey,
Aye.
Mayor Foley.
Aye.
I believe the ayes do have it.
Okay, get drafting. Now I would make a motion to enter executive session. Discuss medical, financial, and credit employment history of a particular person, or corporation, matters leading to the employment, appointment, promotion, demotion, discipline, suspension, dismissal, or removal of a particular person or corporation. Okay, all in favor? Aye. Okay, so we're gonna sign off. We will come back out of executive session to adjourn the meeting, but we have nothing else on the agenda. Night, making a motion. Making a motion to exit executive session at 9:25. Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. We discussed contract with the officer in charge during the executive session. Would someone like to make a motion related to the contract?
I make a motion to approve the contract, the Village of Cold Spring and Matthew J. Jackson, for January 1st, 2025 through December 31st, 2025.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
That is the last item. And make a motion to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.